Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Monday, November 17th. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris here with you on this episode. We have some big free agent news. Josh Naylor is staying in Seattle. We'll dig into his agreement with the Mariners here in just a few minutes. Updates on Emmanuel, Clase, and Luis Ortiz. It's been a minute since we've talked about them. There's been some progress on the legal front in their cases. We have award season upon us. All of those major BBWAA awards have been handed out. We'll talk about who brought home the hardware and whether or not the old BBWAA got it right this year. And we'll take a look at a few other deep free agent pickups that are available this winter and discuss whether or not there could be some hidden value that we didn't get to on our free agent rankings part 2. Eno, how was your weekend?
It was good. Saw some jam band, Jerry Garcia band on Friday night. That was fun. And watched my youngest, Calvin, is getting really into magic. So he's been coming around. He's like, see the Orby? And he's like, it's gone. And he's like, sometimes he just like throws it behind himself. I'm like, it's over there on the ground.
Illusions. I didn't know if you meant Magic the Gathering or if you meant actually.
I mean both.
Illusions.
But yeah, he's a little bit more into illusions now. He's been watching some YouTube series about this illusionist, and so we saw the first Now You See Me. I guess the third one is out in theaters, so I guess he's going to make me watch 2 and 3. But it wasn't that great. But my wife got up in the middle of it and started doing stuff. It was like not into it, but I was like, it's okay. It's still an action movie. It's kind of fun.
Well, if he goes too far with the illusions, you could show him some episodes of Arrested Development with Job. The Gothic Castle. Some good stuff in there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's dig into the rundown for today. Josh Naylor agrees to a 5-year deal with the Mariners. This seemed like the most likely outcome all along, and I think in terms of contract projections, the years were pretty consistently what I saw across the board out there. 4 to 5 years, I think, was mostly the range. We don't know the terms yet in terms of dollars. That'll probably come out after more details, the physical, all of that sort of stuff. But the bigger question would be, with Josh Naylor, how does a player like this age? Because the dollars probably won't be ridiculous. It's probably going to be something in that $90 to $100 million range.
There's some reporting on that as well, right?
Yeah, it's what it's like. I don't know if it's unconfirmed, but it's not official at this point, I guess is the right way to say it. But how does Naylor age over the life of a deal? And I think people look at him and body type and they say, oh, well, that's not going to age well. It's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if being built more like Josh Naylor actually makes you age worse, or if that's just a thing that people believe to be true. But you have some past data, right? You have guys that were first baseman DH types that signed multi-year deals, and you can see what happened over the life of those deals. So in that light, what is your expectation for Naylor, beyond 2026?
Mariners fans, avert your eyes. It does not look good. These are the comps I used. I used K percentage, ISO, and WAR. So basically, and up to the age 28. So up to 28 years old, Kevin Youkilis, Daniel Murphy, Nick Johnson, and Eric Hosmer all had that sort of 9 to 10 WAR. A career up to 28 years old. Josh Naylor has 10.1 wins above replacement since he's come into the league, and he's 28 years old. So you're like, oh, Kevin Youkilis had 25 more wins after his 28th birthday. That's great. He doesn't really seem like Kevin Youkilis because, first of all, Kevin Youkilis is coming off of third base, so he has the best defensive value out of everybody here. He's coming from a higher place. And then Kevin Youkilis just has a great floor provided by that 380 OBP he had before he's 28 and that walk rate that he sustained. Josh Naylor has a 329 OBP and an 8% walk rate. So I don't think the Youkilis comp is really great. But if you zimmer in on the next 3 guys, it seems pretty good. Daniel Murphy, Nick Johnson also walked a lot. He also his career succumbed to injuries, I think. And then you have Eric Hosmer, which is just really uncomfortably close in everything. Eric Hosmer, 8% walk rate. Josh Naylor, 8% walk rate. Eric Hosmer, 17% strikeout rate. Josh Naylor, 16% strikeout rate. Where it differs a little bit is Eric Hosmer's ISO is 154. Josh Naylor's is 178. So Naylor has been a better hitter. He had a 115 WRC plus to Eric Hosmer's 109. And then the defensive numbers that they use at Fangraphs greatly prefer Josh Naylor. So I don't think this is an Eric Hosmer situation, but Eric Hosmer gave his teams 0.9 wins after 28 years old. And so that is the name that should make you go cold. I think he has more power than Eric Hosmer, and I think that's important. So I went over and said, let's do a StatCast comp group. And this has nothing to do with position or contact. This is using max EV, barrel rate, and hard hit rate until 28 years old. Who are his comps? And I think the comps look pretty good. Naylor has a slightly better max EV than the group, but in terms of launch angle, barrel rate, hard hit rate, they're very similar. The comps are Michael Harris II, Alec Boehm, Andrew Vaughn, Andy Pages, and Alec Thomas. You take defensive value out and you say, okay, his best comps are Alec Boehm and Andrew Vaughn. Andrew Vaughn was DFA'd this year? How did that happen?
He was sent down and traded.
Sent down and traded.
Optioned and then traded.
Alec Boehm, has having his name sort of bandied about as a potential DFA or a trade because he's getting more expensive. That's not a great comp list. But once you add in the contact ability, and like, hey, what would Andrew Vaughn get on the market right now?
Vaughn's track record is less convincing than Naylor's by a reasonable margin. So probably even a 1-year deal, maybe 2 for 20 if someone really liked him. But I think that's the difference for me, even with Naylor to Hosmer. Is like Hosmer was up and down, like replacement level, 3-ish WAR guy, negative value, like even before he signed that deal with San Diego. So maybe that was the classic. We have to break the ice in free agency and show future free agents that we're serious about spending money. And we know this isn't a great deal, but in order to get Manny Machado or to get players to sign extensions later, we have to do this now. Like maybe that was the best case for doing what they did with Eric Hosmer.
Eric Hosmer going into the San Diego deal had the 4 years going in this is just to your point, had a negative WAR season in 2014. Then he had in 2015, he had a 3.5 win season where his WRC plus was 124. And then he had a 0.2 win season where his WRC plus was 102. And then Eric Hosmer had a great platform season with a 135 WRC plus and another 3.7 WAR. So definitely some higher, like he had better ceilings there in his 2 good seasons than Naylor, but Naylor has been much more steady. Like you're saying, the bottom for Naylor is 118 WRC plus the last 4 years and a 1.9 WAR wins above replacement, and the top was this year's 128 WRC plus and 3.1 wins. So not quite as the same oscillation, which I think is important because there's something about consistency that makes you feel like he's not going to drop off a cliff. When it comes, none of these guys had the body aspect to it. And I know that there are certain, like speedy players age better, and he's not speedy. I have seen that aging curve, But
that's based on sprint speed, right? Just straight line sprint speed.
And that's the defensive value component. And we've already sort of taken a lot of that defensive value of his aging out by comparing him to other first basemen.
Yeah, it feels like almost dinging him twice.
The Daniel Murphy outcome would be pretty good. Daniel Murphy gave him 15 more wins. If he got, and that's over the life of his career. If there was any more career after this contract, for Hosmer, for Naylor, you'd still get, you want 10 wins. If you're going to pay $100 million, you want around 10 wins. And I think it's possible. I know these comps are very sobering though, and they did upset me because I thought this is a good deal. The other way that I'll make an argument this is a good deal is it's not like we were just looking at San Diego's situation.
Oh man,
And like in 2029, the San Diego Padres are going to be spending on like a 36-year-old Machado, a 35-year-old Cronenworth, a 35-year-old Xander Bogaerts, and a 30-year-old Fernando Tatis. They're going to be spending like $115 million. And that'll even the end won't even be in sight. And there'll still be like another 5 years of that. So it's like that's just comical and crazy. And I don't know how that is going to resolve. But I think for the Mariners, what you say is, okay, there's no way he's terrible in the next 3 years. I don't think that. There's no way. Like, he's been so, like, I think the worst case scenario, he's like a 1.5 win player that's like starting to DH a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. So then you're saying, like, worst case scenario, after 3 years, like, damn, we don't want him on this roster anymore, or like, can we get rid of him? You might be able to get rid of 2 years and $40 million.
Right. If it ends up being 20-ish million per year, which certainly sounds like that's what it's going to come in at. There's a few other factors.
That's doable. Or you like eat half of it, and you get rid of the other half. I mean, that's doable. That's what happened with Eric Hosmer. At the end of his deal, they only finally got rid of him when it was like, when there's only 1 or 2 years left, right? That was the very end of it. So I don't think that the Padres can get rid of any of those deals. I don't think they actually get rid of any of them. Maybe Tatis because he's so young and he's good. But the Mariners can get rid of this deal if it goes bad. So I that's why I like these kind of. This is like a medium risk signing for a medium risk situation. This is not a team that wants to go out there and do wrong on a $300 million deal.
Right. And I think the way this probably works out is sort of what the projections are pointing to is the 3 WAR, knock a half WAR off every season. So 3 to 2.5.
Well, it's a little bit early. It's a little bit early to do the half.
Too early?
28. Yeah, you usually start doing the halves at 30.
Yeah. So maybe
so you would just take his projection that if you were aging his projection, you would take his projection, which is 2.5 wins, and you'd give it to him for a year or two more. So you'd give him 5 wins in the next 2 years, which then you just want 5 more wins over 3 years after that. I mean, it works out well when you just project him and you think about how it's a small deal and you think about how it should go. What doesn't work out that well when you look at the comps.
Yeah, so we'll see if he can beat the comps in this case. Something I saw in the write-up at the Seattle Times about the reunion between Naylor and the Mariners was that he hit well during his brief time in Seattle. We've talked about how difficult it is for players that are new to the ballpark to hit there. It's a very pitcher-friendly environment, probably the most pitcher-friendly environment in baseball by a healthy margin. It boosts strikeouts, it suppresses runs a little bit. Naylor hit .360 with a 408 OBP, slugged .607, had 5 homers and 100 plate appearances at T-Mobile after the trade deadline. It's a small sample. I don't know if you could look at that and say, he's got it figured out, he's going to be fine. But
at least he didn't land and be like, how do I hit here?
Right. Didn't fall on his face, at least. So you're hoping that he doesn't have to make that major sort of adjustment since he got dropped in mid-season and seemed to handle the park, really well.
And we heard to some extent that some of this was harder on righties because the sun is kind of coming in over the righty's shoulder a little bit and affecting the backdrop in some way.
It seemed like there was also a mutual fit, though, from Naylor liked being in Seattle, fit well in the clubhouse. I think we saw what I would describe as a little bit of Captain Jack Sparrow energy in Game 7 of the ALCS. We tried to jump and block that throw from second base. Like, he's always up to something, but in a way that I feel like there's like this fine line. There's the guys that are like kind of dirty players that are doing anything they can to win, which Naylor's not one of those guys. And I feel like you don't always like being teammates with those guys because you feel like their antics are going to get you. Their antics are going to get you hurt because they're the things that like lead to like beanball wars and stuff, right? Naylor's just more of the, I don't know, like just trying to get in your head in a goofy sort of way. And I think
we did have some reactions. Like, remember when he was giving signs? There were some people, out there being like, that you should get a fastball to the dome for that or whatever. I don't believe in that, but I could see other teams sometimes not liking him. But I agree. I think there's something fun about the way he does it. Maybe the vibes are better, but it's not quite Alex Rodriguez punching the glove or, Manny stepping on the glove or whatever it is that has gotten people pissed about him. It's a little bit more. And I think that the vibes actually just fit really well in this. So you kind of, Julio is your statesman. He's a good leader. He's your statesman though. He's like, he says the right thing and has the smile and, he's not necessarily sort of rabble rousing. Whereas I feel like Naylor, you remember the rocking the baby thing, and like he's got a little bit more of an edge to it, where it's like he could actually wake some people up a little bit.
Yeah, good balance, good harmony. So the things that were good about this Mariners team in the second half, mostly being put back together. The questions, of course, will be Jorge Polanco, Eugenio Suarez, whether they get one or both of those guys back, and then what else can they do this winter, either via free agency or possibly via trade, because I think you look at that whole depth chart and you say, where's Harry Ford ever going to play? And if you can't fit him in, like, shouldn't you trade him to a team that needs a catcher and bolster some other part of your roster? There's a few different levers I think they can pull. And we know Jerry DiPoto, Trader Jerry, likes to wheel and deal. So maybe we'll see a lot of other activity from the Mariners now that they've got Naylor back in the fold.
They have an interesting situation where he has said publicly, Jerry DiPoto, that they have about $33 million to spend, which is a very specific number.
It seems like a very truthful amount of money. Like,
yeah. So
didn't round up, didn't round down.
They might have $8 to $10 more million to spend, which the good news is it's a pretty complete roster. I mean, you have to remember that Josh Naylor and Eugenio Suarez weren't on this team to begin the season, and they won a bunch of games. And so now they're going to have Naylor for the full season, and they're going to fill in at third. Third and second have been a problem for them on the depth charts forever. Right now it's Brandon Williamson, but there's at third maybe, but there's also Colt Emerson coming, and you got Cole Young as well. And somebody has to take over for J.P. Crawford, whose defense is flagging and who's also approaching the end of his contract. So you do want to have some opportunities available for young players on this roster. I think that'll be second base. So if they can, figure something out at third for, $10 million, maybe it is a trade for Alec Boehm, to fit there at third base. It's a comp for Naylor. It's just another guy who makes contact and sprays the ball around that could help them with their strikeout rate. So anyway, I think third base is kind of the pain point for me because Williamson is more glove than he's more of a utility guy for me. And they have Luis Rivas in that role. So, if they can shop Williamson, if they can shop Ford, maybe third base is where I'm trying to use the rest of my resources. Because, what's an $8 million reliever going to do for you? Do you want like Luke Weaver on this team as well? Maybe.
You could trade for a guy like that in July if you don't have enough. So that's
what I think too.
Don't need to make the early commitment. I think they find and develop relievers well enough where spending there with, let's say Jerry's being completely honest, it's $33 million and he has enough to spend, and he spent about 20 on Naylor. Yeah, you're looking at
so there's not
a bench guy and a third baseman for $13 million.
You might be able to get Polanco to come back for $10 million, maybe.
And you're spending $3 million at third base, or trading or going.
Or
cheap.
you're pushing all that young stuff over to third. So you're saying Cole Young, Colt Emerson, Brandon Williamson. One of you guys is our third baseman.
If you do bring another bat back to play second, Polanco, then I think you have enough in your lineup where you can let third base be a glove first spot initially. And then
trying out youngsters spot. I mean, it's actually kind of fun to have that as a contending team because you never know what you might find. I mean, that's what the Blue Jays did with their kind of year back last year, was identify pieces that would actually help them this year.
Yeah. So it looks pretty bright right now in Seattle. I'm cautiously optimistic that they can do a few more interesting things in the rest of the offseason. Let's get to a story we haven't talked about in a couple of weeks. We've had some movement. Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz have pled not guilty to illegal betting charges, both released on bond. Ortiz $500,000 bond with some GPS monitoring. Clase, $600,000 bond, also with GPS monitoring. Next court date, December 2nd. So it's going to be a couple of weeks before we probably get any more updates in this case. But since we last spoke, we have learned that the allegations against Clase now go back to pitches that were thrown in 2023. So his involvement covers parts of 3 different seasons. According to federal prosecutors, Clase part of a multi-year plot in which he rigged pitches so that unnamed co-conspirators could win prop bets on whether his pitches were balls or strikes and what velocity they were thrown with. In an indictment filed earlier this month, prosecutors documented 9 separate pitches made by Clase as part of that scheme. They also claim that Clase brought Ortiz into the scheme in which their co-conspirators won more than $450,000. But Ortiz's involvement was really linked to 2 games, June 15th and June 27th. So, yeah.
It's kind of a crazy indictment because, 2 years feels like, what have you guys been doing? How did this not flag anything? And then the indictment reads like a bunch of jabronis. Like, I mean, he's calling his dude from games. You're not supposed to be using a cell phone from the bullpen. You're not supposed to be calling people from the bullpen. Are you kidding me? And the stuff is like where he's like, oh yeah, just say he bought a horse. Like there's money going in between. This is exactly, it does not. I mean, you have to say allegedly, and I understand like this is all alleged, but the evidence is pretty damning. I mean, if they've got wire transfers and stuff, like if they have money going in between these guys that are betting, it's game over. And why didn't these things flag earlier? I mean, if these guys are idiotic like this with regards to how the money's being moved and how they're communicating with each other, then it's safe to assume that like they weren't doing something where like, oh, I will win 80% of my bets on Clase. I'll lose some on purpose. And I'll do some other bets where I lose money, right? On purpose to clean it up. This doesn't sound like those kind of guys. They're not losing on purpose. They're not cleaning up. They're not trying to affect them. The only thing they had was like, it has to be a certain number you can't bet over. They knew that number. But it doesn't seem like it was really run well. So it begs the question, like, if it took you 2 years to catch a group that does not seem to be run well, does that mean there are other groups that are being run well?
Well, according to Commissioner Rob Manfred, the data, the information they get as a result of this being legal, the facts, the figures, right? That's what makes this all better, that they can catch people like this. That's to me one of the funnier things.
Took 2 years.
Yeah, it took 2 years. I mean, 9 pitches though over 2 years.
Right. Like, so was he not doing it that often? Is that
that's
thing?
The key? Like, I think if there's any aspect of this that to me makes it seem like that would have been a little harder to catch, it's the frequency. You're talking about 9 pitches from a reliever scattered out over parts of 3 different seasons. In these allegations.
Anytime something does come up, you're like, okay, let's watch this. And then nothing happens for a month. And you're like, okay.
Right. So I think that's probably why it took a couple of years. And I'm not here standing for Major League Baseball as doing an A+ job at keeping things tidy when it comes to.
But that is the other
gambling.
weird thing about the indictment. Is like 2 years. Wow. 6 pitches from Clase. Like, okay. I tried to look through the 6 pitches from Clase and see how much they cost the Guardians, and it's the same. It mirrors the decisions he made. He cost the Guardians about $300,000 in win expectancy, in theoretical wins. That's not as big a deal. It's like him where he made, I don't know, I didn't count it all up, but he made a few tens of thousands of dollars doing this. The real risk was his career.
Yeah,
because
that was the gamble.
His career is probably over, and their biggest loss as the Guardians is the surplus value on their deals. I think it's at least $50 million of surplus value on Clase's deal. They're talking about the best or second best closer on a tiny little deal.
Well, and when Clase's involvement in this was revealed in late July, I mean, that was right ahead of the trade deadline. He seemed like a near certainty to be traded. Because at that point, the Guardians hadn't pushed their way back into a playoff spot. It looked like they were going to be on the outside looking in. And even if they traded Clase, the argument on our show was they could still rally. Like you're down a short reliever. Like you can live to tell the tale. You got a pretty good bullpen, and sure enough, they did it with him suspended instead of with the benefit of other pieces on the roster from trading him away, because they couldn't once he was placed on administrative leave. So all this is just, to me, on YouTube it says this won't be the last time, and I know this won't be the last time, because I think what you were hinting at before is that there will be people involved in the game willing to try more sophisticated things than this, and they'll likely get away with it for a longer period of time before eventually likely being caught. So like I think this is going to be the first of a few stories in baseball. We're seeing it in other sports. I mean, the Chauncey Billups stuff is crazy. We're not going to get into that here.
That one might be the craziest because he made money and was a star and had an actual job. I think the weakest point is always the worst paid people. So that would be the umpires and the bench warmers, right? So that's what you saw in basketball. The first person that went down was Jonte Porter, who was basically, 13th, 14th guy, who was just coming in for a couple minutes off the bench. He might have had more upside if he'd thought more clearly about his future. He might have been able to claw his way up to 10th man on the bench and, get your kind of low millions of dollars deals to be like a big off the bench who can shoot a three every once in a while, right? Mm-hmm. That if he thought it through clearly, then he might have done that. But if you were, let's say, a reliever whose elbow hurts and you haven't told the team yet, and you're 30, and you feel like this might be it. That's the kind of people. That's the kind of places I would look. And the one way to solve it is to raise the minimum salary.
Yeah, I mean, raising the minimum salary would help. And then you mentioned other people around the team that are also
umpires better,
not paid particularly well, around the game, not paid particularly well. Like that's part of it.
Coaches. I mean, that's something that's happening in the NBA. There's Damon Jones, who's like close with LeBron James, is using his information.
Right. I mean, I'm looking through and thinking about also the main factor. If you think about players that had small signing bonuses, stuck in the minor leagues for a long time, like those are generally going to be your players that are most likely to get embroiled in something like this. But the money doesn't solve everything. I mean, in Clase's case, you think about Edwin Diaz and the top relievers available on the free agent market this year, you can pretty easily put yourself in a position to project that Clase was headed for an eventual 9-figure payout in free agency. He was that type of player, and was willing to risk all of those future earnings
so some
to
of
try
it
and make
just
extra.
Unexplainable too. Like some of it is just
there could be more to the story that we don't know.
Or maybe there's some leverage there that's being used against him.
I thought there was a really interesting story, kind of a profile of Emmanuel Clase that Zach Meisel had on The Athletic that just went up on Monday. You should check that out, just because you get the sense that Clase mostly just kept to himself. Wasn't someone that was buddy with several guys in the clubhouse, even though he'd been in Cleveland for a long time.
And
they didn't know that much about him.
That kind of guy where he's super buddy with everybody.
Yeah, and even as Zach wrote about in his piece, like the relationship between Clase and Ramirez didn't seem warm and friendly necessarily. It didn't seem bad, but it didn't seem like even they had a close connection of any kind, having been teammates for a long time, which is a little bit surprising. But all in all, Clase and Ortiz charged with wire fraud conspiracy, honest services wire fraud conspiracy, money laundering conspiracy, and conspiracy to influence sporting contests by bribery. Each of those charges, I think, go up to like 20 years in prison, which is just, so it's a lot. I think they're, in both cases, based on what was in those documents, I think they're worried more about what happens outside of their baseball career being over at this point, because it looks pretty bad. The other thing that's changed since we last talked about this, Major League Baseball has announced a $200 limit on bets placed on individual pitches. That's not going to solve the problem. It's just like, hey, here's a cup of water for this raging fire. Maybe this will put it out. Like, I don't know, man.
I mean, it limits how much you can make, but you can also do something where you just have an army of people betting all at $1.99 or whatever, you know.
Yeah, and I guess that would also set off some flags, maybe if you're watching it carefully. But it just that's not going to be the answer. And there's a lot written lately. Athletes across all sports getting threats constantly because of missed parlays and props, and it's an ugly situation right now.
It could be leading to just like banning parlays. And I do think that could actually, there could be a big solution because for me, parlays are, I understand why people like it. And there's a lot of money in it from the company standpoint. And it's also kind of fun when you're watching a game to be like, oh, I think they're going to hit a homer here or whatever. You know, I get it. But we can think from this situation, like from my analysis of this, like Clase did this and with 6 pitches, only cost his team three win percentage points. So he did not really affect the outcome of these games. He made this money without affecting the outcome of these games. So if you take away parlays and you're like, okay, now the gambling player needs to throw the game, that's a lot harder, man. That's a lot harder. Or shave points off it. That's still pretty hard. It's in baseball. So Clase would have to go up there and be like, I have to give up 1 run, but not 2. Right?
Anything's possible, man. Like I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, this solves it if we take this away. But the simple thing about parlays, like they're extremely predatory. If people don't understand the math and the low probability of hitting 4 or 5 leg parlays, I mean, I feel like every time you see a gambling ad within the game, it's usually someone at the desk throwing 3 out together. Usually it's, throw $100 on this to win.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think banning props. But I think banning parlays as well. But you can do parlay props, which is just like the most ridiculous idea.
And even if you had somebody who was going to fix something for you, you could take a couple of those props, put them into a parlay, and have a much higher probability of hitting because you had. But I
think the props are the problem. The props are the problem. It's just these small things. These small things where a player can take himself out of a game and call himself injured, like Jonte Porter did, right? And not really affect the outcome of the game at all, but just have someone bet the under on his rebounds, you know?
It would be amazing if we could just have this as a legal thing that didn't have a bunch of downside, but clearly there's been a lot of downside that I did not anticipate. I did not think this was going to be quite this bad, but there's probably some reason to believe it could have been all along. Let's get to award season, man. Let's talk about some hardware for a minute. Some very familiar faces winning the MVP award. Shohei Ohtani getting his 4th in 5 seasons. Aaron Judge getting his 3rd in 4 seasons. The only reason Ohtani didn't get 5 in a row is because Judge went bonkers when Ohtani was still in the AL and put that little gap in the resume for Ohtani.
Oh, I mean, Ohtani, dude. Like, what is it? There's nothing to say anymore. The Judge versus Cal Raleigh thing really came down to a lot of the stuff we discussed late in the season. Judge's season was so great offensively that I think that in the end it was just enough to overcome the fact that Cal had a little bit more of a full story to tell in terms of doing this all while catching and basically putting a whole team on his shoulder to get to the playoffs. But when you kind of look through it and you're like, okay, Judge average 331, Cal Raleigh 247, Judge 457, Cal Raleigh 359 OBP, Judge 688 slugging, Cal Raleigh 589. They're like the list of WRC plus seasons over 200 numbers like 25 or 30. Like he had one of the best 25 or 30 seasons in the big leagues ever. And Cal Raleigh had one that was, and this is once you even park adjust, the park adjusted numbers for Cal Raleigh, 161 WRC plus, 204 for Judge. So once it gets to like a full win, I'm like, win above replacement. I don't think they're necessarily in the same bucket anymore where I have to say, okay, let me parse this further. And I do think you could say Cal Raleigh, he's calling games. There's some sort of calling and game prep value that's not in that WAR number. But is it a full win of WAR? I mean, that's the argument you have to make. It did end up being a fairly close vote.
Yeah, 17 first place votes for Judge, 13 for Raleigh, and they were flipped on second place. So everybody had them 1-2 on their ballots. So I would not have been mad if Cal Raleigh won, but I do think the gap that Judge was able to create with the offensive numbers that you laid out is just enough for me to be like, yeah, even though Cal did that as a catcher, we may never see a season like that again. I think the voters got this one right, if such a thing exists in this case.
Yeah, let me get the exact number of WRC Plus seasons over 200. Qualified batters.
It's not many. There's some ridiculous names on that list, too.
Oh, okay. So there's 60 of them. But, you know, Josh Gibson, Ted Williams, Barry Bonds, these guys all over the list. Like, one of the best 60 offensive seasons of all time. Like, yeah, it was a good season. And this is including a lot of the Negro League stuff too.
Yeah. So
which they don't have quite the length of season.
Right. So I think when you look, can you just narrow it down to like post-integration or expansion era? I mean, the 200 WRC plus season is extremely, extremely rare.
Yeah. If I do take them out, it's taking a second here. Because, you know, some of those seasons, the plate appearances for the Negro Leagues, they'll have some that had like 70 plate appearances, and it's qualifying because the amount of data they have is not the same. Aha, yes. If it's just MLB history, he just had the 25th best offensive season of all time, and by qualified batters in the National and American League, and there's only 32 200 plus. So yeah, so it was a great season.
I think it's funny we don't really talk a lot about the other players on the ballot. You know, it's who won, and oftentimes you'll forget who took second. On the NL side, it was Kyle Schwarber. I think people might remember Judge Raleigh this year because it was very close, and Cal's season was just an amazing, all-time great season from a catcher. But, you know, Jose Ramirez was third on the AL side for MVP. Bobby Witt Jr. was fourth. Tarik Skubal popped in at 5. That was your top 5 this year on the AL side. But yeah, Kyle Schwarber, number 2 behind Ohtani in 2025 NL MVP. That will be forgotten by a lot of folks.
Yeah. Yeah. There was some that wanted him to win Schwarber over Ohtani, but the real problem is that you can't say, oh, well, maybe the defensive penalty is too great, and you know, any argument you can make for Kyle Schwarber as DH being so good that he should win it all is bested by Ohtani.
Maybe Kyle Schwarber should have pitched, you know, like just should have like come back in August, started pitching. Maybe that would have helped.
I guess that's, you know, it's fair to say like, oh, should we take that part out of it because Kyle Schwarber can't pitch, and we can't just keep saying over and over again, oh, well, do you pitch? No? Okay, you're not the MVP. But Ohtani also had his WRC plus was 20 points higher.
No, you don't even have to add the pitching in. I think you can come to the conclusion that Ohtani still had a better year as a hitter than Schwarber did. Schwarber had a great year, but It's the general flaw in our brains. Did you win? No. Okay. It's the same with the team analysis. We were talking about, how'd your fantasy season go? Oh, well, I had a bunch of 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s in my drafting holds. That's a good season, but it'll be forgotten 3 or 4 years from now. You're not going to think about 2025. You're going to think about the seasons in which you won multiple titles that happen in the next few, right? That's going to happen. Geraldo Perdomo was 4th in the NL MVP voting. I just think we have to really use our brains with our hot takes in the spring and try to manifest the most unexpected top 5 MVP finisher imaginable in 2026. Who could it be? That's the real question. I mean, he put together a great season. I'm glad it was recognized, at least in that form.
Yeah. What do you think Perdomo was projected to do before the season in terms of wins above replacement?
2.5, because he's a good defensive shortstop.
2.5. So he's a 2.5 win player that jumped to 7 wins and got into the top 5. Right now, if we were just doing Steamer 600, so this is giving everybody 600 plate appearances. That would be like Austin Riley having an MVP season.
I'd be less surprised if Riley did it than I am that Perdomo jumped into the top 5.
Jackson Trio is only projected for 2.9 wins.
Well,
He could. That would be
projections are
less
stupid
surprising
sometimes.
too. Well, he's also young, so it's.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Perdomo's
not old.
reasonably young.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my list would be something like Jackson Churio, Will Smith is in here, Austin Riley. It's somebody I don't think it's somebody who hasn't ever done anything before. Like, I don't think you can say Evan Carter is going to have that kind of season, even though he's projected for 2.5 wins, because there is something to Perdomo having like 2 years of being okay, right? So, like, maybe Steven Kwan, he's at 2.8. Somebody who's been in the league for a little bit, who has like one adjustment left in him, is younger than 30. It's
a fun game.
So,
we got to file this one away for the spring, though. I'm
Tyler
excited.
Soderstrom's down there.
You got to have. I think the hack is having a lot of defensive value. So Kwan doing it in left field, I think, is actually possible.
Carter harder for Soderstrom, but Soderstrom was good in the outfield, so defensively. So if that held,
yeah, I like trying to find those next surprises. The Cy Young Awards, not that surprising. Paul Skenes followed up winning NL Rookie of the Year last year with his first NL Cy Young. Skubal went back to back on the AL side. Any quibbles with that?
No, I had a vote. I had a vote in the AL Cy Young. I do understand that the metrics that adjust for quality of competition favored Garrett Crochet. Here's here's some way I was thinking about it, and I'm going to try it out with you guys. It's a safe space, right? I hope.
I hope so.
It's a little bit like postseason numbers with the Hall of Fame. Now, I want to be able to add postseason numbers into your Hall of Fame case because they existed. You did something good. Andy Pettit, congratulations. You pitched a lot and you did it. I don't want to hold it against somebody who didn't get there. So basically what I'm saying is Skubal didn't pick his opponents.
Did Paul Skenes, right? I mean, that's part of being in the Centrals in a typical year.
So at some level, like you're holding something against the player that they have no control over. That's how I see it. So I did include Baseball Prospectus WAR. I have a WAR formula where I basically take all the available formulas and almost average them. But it's not that dumb because I do weight the Fangraphs WAR a little bit more because I just believe that they have less control over a lot of those things. And quality of opponent seems to be one of those things that the pitcher doesn't control. So BP is in there and it moves some guys around a little bit, but I wasn't just going to take the BP number and say, aha, if you look for a quality of team opponent, Garrett Crochet is better.
Yeah. It ended up being 26 first place votes for Skubal, 4 for Crochet, and they were flipped. Everybody had them first or second on their ballots from this year's class, with Hunter Brown coming in third, Max Fried fourth, Brian Wu rounding out the top 5 on the AL side.
That was my ballot. I mean, I ended up having the chalk ballot, but it's funny because I did it with my weird little proprietary WAR formula.
On the Rookie of the Year front, Drake Baldwin gets the NL honors. Nick Kurtz, very unsurprisingly, gets the AL. We talked a lot about Kurtz in our episode rehash of First Pitch Arizona. Drake Baldwin, man, I think there might be a slight undervaluation of what he can do because of the uncertainty on how much they can push his playing time so long as Sean Murphy is there. But the huge difference, if you look at the Atlanta depth chart for 2026 versus these last few years, Marcell Ozuna is a free agent. He's gone. He's probably not re-signing there.
Open.
DH is open. I think if you build a great roster that you expect to see in October, and you're in the position where you can have 2 catchers you trust, I think you're happier to keep that tandem together than you are to break it apart. Sure, if you get an offer you like for Sean Murphy, you could trade him and you're fine. Go get a backup catcher somewhere else. But I think there's enough playing time for Baldwin to be among the plate appearance leaders among catchers in 2026, even if Sean Murphy is there working now as the veteran backup.
I don't know if I go so far because you're going to have somebody in the outfield that has a banged up knee and wants to play at DH too. So I think it will cost them a little bit in plate appearances. What I would do is just point to the fact that I think Drake Baldwin does everything amazingly well. I mean, I think there's even some growth in terms of on-base ability, but he makes contact. He sees the zone well. He puts the ball in the air with authority. Really great hard hit rates. The swing path metrics are good. I mean, there's everything about what he does is great. And this year, 446 plate appearances, Drake Baldwin managed to hit 274 with 19 homers and 80 RBI. So I think he'll have more plate appearances than that. And so that suggests he can hit 20 homers, get close to, 90, RBI. And I think if you add the runs in, you've got 150, 160 RBIs and runs. I mean, I think that's still going to be a top 5 catcher with the sort of asterisk that, maybe Murphy gets traded or, maybe Murphy gets hurt. And he does get into that sort of William Contreras 600 plate appearance, 580 plate appearances level, in which case I think he'd be the number 1 catcher in baseball. So I think this was a case where, he did a great job and, there was another player that some people feel was robbed, and I could see it in that Cade Horton had a really excellent season by ERA and WHIP, because his strikeout rate was lower and his walk rate was around average. And, a lot of this came from suppressing balls in play for Cade Horton, which, newer metrics will give him some credit for that. Older metrics will not. And older metrics like FIP are fueling pitcher war. So Cade Horton only has 2.2 wins to Drake Baldwin's 3.1. And I guess that fueled a lot of the vote. If you use something like RA9 wins, which is just how many runs did Cade Horton allow on the field and how much was that worth? Without any of the what did the defense do and what did this do and what did this do? Cade Horton had a 3.5 wins. So you can make the case that Cade Horton should have won it. I think that was Drake Baldwin was a fine choice. I don't think this was because I don't give pitchers all of the credit. So, even with my random weird WAR calculator, he wouldn't end up with 3.5 wins. Even though RA9 WAR is in there, he'd probably end up with something like 2.5 wins or 2.7 wins. And that'd still be short of Drake. Now, that is within the error band where I'd say, oh man, a half win. Maybe I just look at Cade Horton, I look at Drake Baldwin. But when I do that, I see an excellent starting pitcher who, I don't know how the future looks like for him. When I look at Drake Baldwin, I see the future. I'm like, he does everything I want a guy to do. So there's no way I'm looking at these two and being like, oh, Drake Baldwin just got lucky on balls in play. And so, I'm going to take the pitcher here.
Drake Baldwin was just inside the top 20 among catchers and plate appearances as a rookie. But the thing that he did that was, I think, maybe more impressive than anything else in his statistical profile, Drake Baldwin had a 15.2% K rate. It's the lowest K rate he's had at any level of his professional career as a debuting catcher in the big leagues. So I think that's a special bat.
Who's often DHing too, so he's coming off the bench cold.
Yeah, I think there's a really special bat there. We probably have a couple of levels he can still reach in the years ahead. And he was inside the top 10 in terms of dollars earned, despite being like 17th or 18th in plate appearances. So I think there's a nice up arrow there. Could easily be a top 5 catcher. Even with just a slight bump in plate appearances, there's always the possibility that he gets even more than that. The other names in the top 5 behind Baldwin and Horton, Caleb Durbin, Isaac Collins, and Dalen Lyle rounded out the top 5. So a few Brewers on there getting a little bit of love for their contributions.
Dalen Lyle was all over First Pitch Arizona.
Everybody loves Dalen Lyle.
And then he showed up in my swing comps with terrible swing comps because he's not really going to hit for power.
Yes, the swing comps. We're going to have a long conversation about swing comps at some point.
I would just have to say that, like, even from without the swing comps, even from a Fangraphs thing, before First Pitch Arizona, we had this conversation about in the Discord and some other places, I think on here, about what his upside was long term, and was he a great keeper? There was somebody saying in the Discord that they did not think he was a keeper in a 20-team league, which I have him in Devil's Rejects, and was like, I mean, I hear you to some extent, but Dalen Lyle did just show his best slugging percentage, or his best isolated slugging percentage since rookie ball in the major leagues. And he does so without great bat speed, without the great swing metrics. You can see it in the max EV, the barrel rate. Like, this is a guy who's more likely to have league average power and has no defensive value. So I just want to throw out there that, like, this could be one of those guys we overinflate and will go too high.
Probably, but the thing I'm wondering about with Dalen Lyle, he's still young. He turned 23 at the end of this month. Shares a birthday with Hazel the Golden Doodle. She'll be 9 at the end of this month, by the way. Her wish list is on Chewy if you're interested in contributing to Hazel's 9th birthday party. Dalen Lyle's got an ADP of like pick 200 right now in November. That is kind of in that, there's guys here that do other things and have done them for longer that I trust more in that spot. The thing about Dalen Lyle's profile we talked about previously is that the defense graded out terribly. That is a Nats organization-wide problem almost. And I just wonder if some of that's fixable. Can you get the right group of coaches?
Because he has legs.
In place? Yeah, right? He's got
like
legs.
He's not
2
legs. A plotter.
Yeah, he can move. Like, he should.
He's got speed,
He should at least be a passable corner defender, right? And if he's got a bad arm, then you'd say, okay, well, at least we can put him in left. Like, I just, up and down that roster, you look at players like, seems like that guy is underperforming defensively. And I think you could probably say that about Dalen Lyle. And that to me just points to like a bigger question that they have to solve as an organization.
The power is not completely not there. So, like, I would say that he probably has at least league average power. So if you give him league average power, now you're saying here's a guy who's not going to walk, but he doesn't strike out that much, and he has legs. So there's like and the projection is pretty good from Steamer. I bet you the BATX projection will come lower than this. So I think the BATX projection is going to be for like 255, 10 homers and 15 steals or something.
I want to make, actually, let me rephrase this. I want to find someone who's willing to make us an app that tracks draft price throughout the entire winter and can flag when each set of projections comes out, because there's the very early drafts with no projections, and then Steamer comes out and there's some bumps up and down. And then eventually the BATX comes out. And I think as each round of projections comes out, you'll see some slight shifts based on what those projections tell us about that player. I just want to see how impactful each of those releases are. Even if they're only a little impactful, I think we'd see some sort of movement on the charts for the more extreme players the projections disagree about. On the AL side, behind Nick Kurtz, teammate Jacob Wilson came in second. Roman Anthony, Noah Cameron, Colson Montgomery rounding out the top 5. Colson Montgomery, player we didn't hear about that much in Arizona. A player that we were probably wrong about in terms of his immediate impact in the big leagues, if only because the homers were there in spades. This guy hit 21 homers in 284 plate appearances, had a 29.2% K rate. We were worried about the swing and miss. I don't know where we go next with Colson Montgomery. It's a really fun start to his big league career. But if you said, give me a projection for next year, I'd probably just sputter out sentence fragments for about 8 minutes trying to make something up.
Well, I mean, he just has explosive bat speed, and he doesn't quite have the tilt of a Kurtz or Ohtani type, but he does, have more of a fly ball swing, as you saw with the 47% fly ball rate from Colson Montgomery. So I think it's just going to be a really low batting average, really high power play. It's going to look more like you'd expect him to play third. And I think the question for the White Sox is how long can he play short? And the defensive numbers were good enough, although Mydroth played a lot of second and short as well. So they're going to, do the sorting hat situation with the White Sox next year. For us on the outside, I think that means Shortstop eligibility is there for the short term. I don't know about the long term. I think that he's probably a worse bet in OBP leagues than batting average leagues. And I think he's kind of your prototypical low batting average slugger.
He's right now sitting at ADP, pick 200, right next to
Dalen
Michael
Lyle.
Nelson Trout.
Oh, wow. Who Mike Trout has actually become that type of player late in his career, you know?
Yeah, see, but the thing is, when you used to be the previous version of Mike Trout and you turn into the current version of Colson Montgomery, people are going to give you the benefit of the doubt. But when you were frequently injured as a prospect, as Colson Montgomery has been with a lot of back injuries, and power seems to be your carrying tool, I think that's going to be met with a lot more skepticism. Even though they could end up, in the weirdest way, I could see them returning appropriate value for those picks and doing almost the same sort of thing statistically, which is just a bizarre thing to say.
It would be really weird.
The market might actually have this right.
Yeah,
I would take Trout.
How many...
If I had to. If I had to take one at that spot, I'm taking Trout.
Yeah? You just want the...
How about, Jason
guy.
Dominguez goes around there. Dominguez versus Montgomery is a little more of a fair toss-up in my head, even though one's a shortstop and one's an outfielder.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I got burned by Dominguez this year, and I always try to be like, oh, well, just got burned by him last year. It could be this year. It could be the Michael Garcia, you know?
I got pulled into an eBay live card auction on Saturday night. Just got mesmerized by it for about 2 hours. I didn't buy anything, which is kind of sad. But I sat there and just watched this guy sell cards for a while. It was actually kind of fun for a couple of reasons. One, the guy that did this was pretty good. Vintage Junk Wax, I think is the handle. Does a lot of live streams. Saturday nights at like 8 Eastern. So he's around if you're home, not doing anything on a Saturday night. He pulled up a Jason Dominguez Bowman first that had been signed in person. It wasn't like signed in the pack. It was authenticated, signed later. And I just thought to myself, I'm like, remember how crazy people would have been about this card 3-4 years ago? I think it sold for like $40 or $50 at most. It didn't go for a lot, but I had zero impulse to swipe on that card. None whatsoever. I was fascinated by watching everybody else try to buy it. But man, I'm lost on Jason Dominguez. I think he should get better. I think if you take off all the backstory and just evaluate him through the lens of the swing decisions he makes and how hard he hits the ball in the home park, and you just said, who is this guy that hit 257 last year, 331 OBP as a 22-year-old, had almost a 50% hard hit rate, K rate 27%. Like, I'd probably like that guy. I'd probably like that player.
Actually, you convinced me, man. I'm taking him out of this group.
You're taking him over Trout and Colson Montgomery.
Yeah, man. He's going to steal the most bases, and he's got excellent bat speed of his own. I feel like there's just a tweak in there that needs to happen. Maybe he needs to leave and go somewhere else. But the one thing that makes me really nervous is the defensive value.
Yeah, that's definitely gone in a
he can't
direction
play.
I didn't expect. He got a
Play over
40
Stanton
future
at
from
DH.
Fangraphs, though. Like, they put a 40 on his glove. So the idea that he was ever a center fielder was probably a little aggressive. But man, I thought he could at least be fine in a corner.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll get there.
I think he needs to be. Maybe that's what he's working on.
Brendan Cuddy told us left field at Yankee Stadium is tricky. And I'm willing to trust the beat writers that are there every day watching players try to navigate the unique twists and turns of a ballpark. So I'll give Dominguez a little bit of room there. But live card auctions are awesome. We should do some live card auctions. Or maybe we should just watch other people's live auctions. Maybe that's the way to do it.
Auctions are fun, generally.
I don't know why I like them so much. What's wrong with me? I am such a dork. I was just sitting there watching other people buy cards.
Dude. Fantasy auctions are great. Everyone has to have an exact number for a player.
Yeah. That's what I think that's what I liked about it, though, because it reminded me of building a fantasy baseball team.
Yeah.
And the variable, it was just not knowing what card was coming up next, because it was all different sports. It was a collection that he had purchased that he was auctioning off. So there was some hockey stuff that got mixed in. There was old stuff. There was new stuff. And the thrill of, hey, what's coming out next? What's coming out next? Like that was
That's
there. And then
for fantasy, where you know all the players.
But then it's like, it's up. Oh, do I want this? And how much is this worth? And actually, I don't have enough time to do a lot of research. I'm going to have to just decide if I want this card or not. That's actually kind of cool. So I think that's why I unexpectedly got a little bit hooked on it and spent 2 hours watching it. I mean, I ate a donut in my bed watching cards get auctioned off on eBay on a Saturday night. That's me living my best life right there. Absolutely. That's exactly me living my best life. All right, let's get to a couple other topics before we go. I saw some rumors, some reports, some pitchers that may or may not be on the move. A couple of these from Will Salmon. The Mets are getting calls about Kodai Senga. Doesn't mean they're necessarily trying to move him, but there are teams interested in trying to bring Senga into the fold. And I thought that was interesting because the Mets maybe don't have enough starting pitchers if they trade him. But then again, they brought up Nolan McLean, Joe Tong at the end of the year. They got more prospects coming through. I could see them maybe being in on Cease or one of the top free agents. That's a possibility. But I definitely didn't think about Senga trade rumors in November, even though they make some sense with the brief demotion he had at the end of the year, trying to put the pieces back on track for the Mets in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Rubik's Cube. I think for them, the question is not so much as about money, is what is Kodai Senga's upside? Because right now they feel like we have these young guys that are ready to step in. Do we feel like Kodai Senga is a number 2 and we can just pencil him in there? If not, and he's just a collection of guys, he's in the collection of guys that we will fill out the rotation with, then he's less valuable to them because they need clear upgrades.
I think there's a bounce back coming from Kodai Senga. So much of the struggle to me can link back to health. He spent a lot of time on the IL, really throughout his time with the Mets. When that ghost fork is working, he can be their best starter, at least in the last couple of seasons. Maybe some of the younger guys he's not.
It's a high variance where it's like, hey, if he's healthy in September and October, that's all we care about. It's kind of the Dodgers playing a little bit.
I mean, he missed most of last season with injuries. 113 and a third at the big league level this year. Some minor league innings tacked on there. So about 120 or so total in the org. 166 and a third back in 2023. For his career, it's a 3 ERA and a 125 whip. So he does have a little bit of that weird ERA, excellent whip, closer to average sort of thing that came up on, I think, our last show.
It's not great command, higher walk rate than you expect. The other thing that is probably what they're debating right now is what is his fastball velo going to be next year? Because he was pretty excellent, at 96, but he also had a big drop in strikeout rate when it came to 94.8 miles an hour last year. And he wasn't really coming back with that velo when he came back late in the season. So, I guess, the medical team gets to weigh in on this one as well.
Home road splits for Senga the last 3 seasons. 280 ERA at home, 117 whip, 324 ERA on the road, 134 whip. So I don't know how much I like him if he ends up in a more neutral park, but if he stays with the Mets, I do like him for a bounce back at the discount so far.
I think all these items we have here are very interesting because you've got the sort of Freddy Peralta, no, we're not moving him. Kris Bubic, who seemed like such a find for the Royals last year. Why would you trade him? But he's coming off of injury. Do the Royals feel like they have some depth to trade from in there? And then Brad Keller back to starting pitcher. I mean, this is the part of the schedule where people are trying to figure out, can we fake our way to a rotation next year? Where are the innings coming from? How desperate are we to get at the top of the market, and spend on that? Or, there are teams like the Pirates or the Padres or whatever that are not going to sign the top starters probably, So they need to. So there's also a news item you need to put on here. The Padres signed Kyle Hart.
Oh, yeah. How did I miss that?
And I'm sure it was for less than the $5 million that he had on the option. I'm sure it's more like $1 million. Maybe he can be in the bullpen. Maybe he can be part of the 5th starter solution. He's just innings that they've bought. So this is the innings market right now, where you have a little bit more high variance with Senga and Peralta. They could be top end options. I don't really believe the Bubic is necessarily a top end option. I would buy him as a as a 4-5, maybe. Keller is like pretty obviously would be a 5-6 if you bought him, like a 5, like a stretch, maybe RP. Maybe he's a Jacob Junis for you. I could see that with a good breaking ball. But I think it's interesting that this is a part of the roster and a part of the offseason where a certain part of a certain group of teams are like, I'm focused on who's my number 4, 5, and 6 starting pitcher next year. And I need to do this cheap. And the one name that I just wanted to throw on the mix that we haven't heard that much about that I like better once you figure in cost of money, upside, downside, I like better than all these guys. It's Cody Ponce. Because, yes, there is some risk. And, you've got guys coming over that are second level coming over from Japan and Korea, like Foster Griffin, Cody Ponce, and Drew Anderson, who we don't know if he's even coming over, but he set the strikeout rate record in the KBO. But when you look under the hood at these guys, Foster Griffin averages around 90 miles an hour on the fastball. Drew Anderson's 89, 90, and may just stay. He hasn't even really confirmed that he's coming. Cody Ponce was 94 plus, 94, 95 on the fastball with a new splitter. That I want to come to the table on that, even if I have to pay more than what Eric Freddy got.
He's going to get more than Freddy, I think. Yeah, Freddy got 2 and 15, right?
Right. So if I have to give him 2 and 20, I'm doing that. I think he can be a 5-starter at worst. That's not getting me too far into the risk. It does make it interesting. Maybe the Padres are like, well, 2 and 20, I want like a more of a sure thing.
We'll give you $2 million this year and $18 million next year.
Yeah.
Which is just like, you can't keep doing that.
Nick
that doesn't
Pivetta plan.
Well, before the show, I was wondering, are they going to trade Nick Pivetta? Is that wrong to do that? Like, he got the money. He's guaranteed the money. He has opt-outs after 26 and 27.
They'd
so he's
have
got
to
choices.
get back like 2 starting pitchers. It'd have to be like,
like Bergert and Kolek?
Bubic and Bergert.
I was trying to figure out where Bubic should end up, though. I was thinking, they need outfielders in Kansas City. Like, if you reach out to the Orioles, you're like, hey, what do you think of Chris Bubic? We like him. How about Dylan Beavers or something like Beavers plus something? Like, can you pull something like that? Like, you seem lower on Bubic than me, though, and I almost feel like that would be pretty light. I think there are probably teams that like Bubic.
But even if you like Bubic, isn't it? It's 1 year left.
See, he's going to be a free agent already?
Yeah, man, he's been around for a while. He was like a reliever.
Come on. Sure enough, free agent after 2026.
Yeah, this is it.
Well,
so it's 1 year. That's why I'm making that face. I mean, it's 1 year of a guy that popped last year. Like I'm not giving him Beavers for that.
Yeah, that's too much. Man, I thought he had another year beyond next year.
Luis Matos?
I don't know if that helps the Royals enough, but I think the Giants would be happy to do it. No, I think you need a position player with 1 year left. I think the Royals can take on a little bit of money. Bubic will be cheap because of the injuries. He's not going to cost that much with his arbitration raise. But maybe you can find a position player that's going to hit free agency that you're not going to bring back that's on a similar level.
That's a good idea.
We'll try to identify that player at our earliest convenience. But you could also try to identify that player in the Discord for us. As far as Cody Ponce
is just
goes,
money. That's why I like it. Like you're not giving up a player.
But that's why I think even before he signed that deal with the White Sox that have been 2 off seasons ago already for Eric Freddy, there were a lot of teams in because not that many years, not that many dollars. And it's almost like, well, there were that many teams in, but it still leveled off at 2 and 15. Yeah, it's because most teams are modeling performance in a similar enough way where they're not going to go crazy. Someone's not going to come kicking through the glass and saying 4 for 60. We're using a different model.
They would have been wrong.
That wouldn't have been good, right? So that 2 for 15 was about right, as we saw for Freddy over these last 2 years.
One little difference though with Freddy though, still fastball velo.
Yeah, that's what I think makes Ponce really interesting. I think there's maybe like a number 3 sort of starter profile in there.
Yeah,
and a few different places that could fit. So. Curious to see where he lands. Are there any other discounted starters we didn't talk about on Free Agent Rankings Part 2 that you're intrigued by? I mean, Brad Keller looks so good as a reliever. I know he's got a lot of pitches. I'd rather just sign him as a reliever than sign him with the expectation he's going to be a really good starter again. But I had forgotten he had thoracic outlet surgery near the end of his time as a starter, and maybe he just wasn't healthy in that last foray as a starter before the move to the bullpen this year with the Cubs.
I'm a little bit intrigued by Sean Newcomb as like an Andrew Haney type. Like I could see him popping and throwing 120 innings one year and being like a decent lefty. So especially if it goes to the right park, like think of Sean Newcomb's career and Matthew Boyd's. I mean, I guess Matthew Boyd had better strikeout rates and but there was a great fit there with a lefty and Wrigley. So I don't know. He's a guy that pops up. And like also I love the Nate Pearson signing. Just because I'm a stuffist. And I don't know what exactly they're going to do with him necessarily, but I thought that was a good signing. And then Nestor Cortez is somebody that like I just want to know what's wrong. And I want to see how long the recovery is going to take. Like a tendon in his left arm, but which tendon?
I think they're all pretty important.
Months. Yeah, he's gone. He's not gonna. Would I give him? I might give him one of those deals where you pay him $1 million for this next year and
like
$10 million next year.
2 and 12, but it's backloaded for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if with that timetable, does he have enough runway to come back mid-season? I guess that could leave the door open for this year, depending on how he recovers.
Medically, how long for Griffin Canning? It's not, Achilles injuries are terrible and they are terrible to rehab, but how does that affect a pitcher? And when do I think his arm will be ready?
I think ever since Michael Soroka, the Achilles injury has just terrified me as a long-term problem, but I hope that's not the case for Griffin Canning. I think it's often a year to come all the way back from Achilles. That's a really tough injury to rehab and come back from. Also, Soroka is only 28 years old.
I know.
That happens when you debut at 20. You can hit free agency and bounce around a couple of times and still be in your 20s, which is amazing.
If I was a rich team, I know this isn't starters. We were kind of talking starters, but if I was a rich team, I would sign Tyler Rogers.
Just like 3 and
here's our fancy ball
30, like a $10 million a year. How much do you think he's going to cost?
I don't think it'll take that much. 2 and 16.
2 and 16? Yeah, I think most rich teams are going to be in at that. All right.
But the starting pitcher market is not great. I mean, you want to take Soroka, who looked like somewhere in between. There's the in between guys like Nick Martinez, Soroka, Aaron Savali. They're not very exciting. Do you want the super old guys? There's Miles Michaelis, Paul Blackburn, Marcus Stroman still kicking around. I guess, Stroman has a decent track record. He could pop in a 1-year deal. I might give Stroman 1 and 10 or something.
Paul Blackburn. There you go. There's one of your random, very inexpensive guys that could just soak up some innings.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that maybe working out. Number 5 starter type. More of a get you there guy than someone you're going to have starting playoff games.
San Diego Padres, come on down.
If you're him, right? Pitcher friendly environment, great weather, great pitching coach, all good things. As for the Padres, the Kyle Hart news did not make the rundown, but the Seidler family is beginning the process of exploring a sale of the team. So that's out there. And I think one number you'll see thrown out there, or 2 numbers you'll see thrown out there, the recent sales of other franchises coming in that 1.75, 1.8 billion range. That's probably about the most you'll see the Padres go for, because they also have a lot of debt right now. It's a mess right now. That organization, unfortunately, is just it's like not just the major league payroll. It's unfortunately it's a huge financial mess.
Yeah, that's why there's been rumors that Fernando Tatis would be traded, but I would love to get someone who's in an ownership group to get some truth serum into him and truthfully, would you rather have the team just blown up and be to the studs, like the tiniest payroll? Is that the team you want to buy? Or do you want to buy the team with a marketable outfielder who's young, who's on a long-term deal, and who, mostly is returning their team from a playoff run?
Yeah. What's also interesting, though, is that Dennis Lin's latest report has the most likely outcome is AJ Preller signing a new contract, right? His contract would be up at the end of the season, which would put Preller in place to be at least the architect for the teardown. If there's going to be one, there's going to have to be a reckoning eventually with that roster. And given Preller's scouting acumen, especially, I don't know how many GMs and presidents of baseball operations you would trust more to give up future value, to give up present value for future value.
He's in the Dombrowski. He's in the Dombrowski situation.
He's
like
in the Dombrowski, but
he hasn't closed.
I think he can go back the other way, though. I think Dave Dombrowski
has built up. He built up the resources to do it a second time. When he first came in, he traded everyone away. He had no prospects. He built up all the prospects and he did it again.
Yeah, my perception of Dombrowski is he's a little more like the moving walkway at the airport. It's just like, sell. We just go that way. But I think
we win.
I think Preller can loop back around and say we can be the other side too. We can buy and sell.
If I had like maybe a stronger hand in ownership that would stay him from some of the exuberances he's shown contract wise, I'd be pretty. I think he's got one of the best eyes in baseball. I think his Latin American situation is better than anyone's.
Yeah, and they have stuff they can trade. It's a lot of guys that they've recently acquired, or Tatis or Jackson Merrill. That name hasn't come up yet. I mean, I think with Merrill, you want to give that some time, A, for him to rebound this year, B, just kind of see what happens in between.
My guess of my answer for which team you'd rather have to buy is the one that was torn down to the studs, because you have no fixed, what's it called when you have to pay something?
Costs?
Yeah, you basically have no fixed costs that you are locked into for a long time. Obligations. You don't have long-term obligations.
I get the sense that this is a completely uninformed take, shockingly. I don't know if anyone's going to want to buy this team in its current state. I think the Seidler family is probably going to have to hold on to it a little bit longer. Tough punishment to have to hold on to a major league franchise and probably work through the TV deal fallout, but also the payroll situation and those long-term obligations to a lot of players that, as you mentioned earlier, are going to be very old and still under contract. I think that's a tough sell for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, we'll see.
But we'll see how it falls in line. New manager there, Craig Stamen, 3-year deal for him. So maybe Preller's new deal will kind of line up with that. Maybe that'll sync up. They'll both be there through 2028. That's the 6th manager they've had under Preller now in San Diego. A lot of change. We need to go. This
Probably
episode
wasn't the manager's fault.
Might not have been the manager's fault every time.
Yeah.
Time to go. On our way out the door, reminder, you can join our Discord. You can do that with the link in the show description. Weigh in. Maybe we were a little too harsh throughout the show on Colson Montgomery or Jason Dominguez. Maybe not. Maybe we were appropriately harsh on both of them. I think we like Dominguez at this point, though. The hype has finally faded. Anything else we got going on this week? We got more episodes coming up this week. That's cool. I'm excited about that.
Jed and Trevor coming back.
Yep, we got two more episodes coming up this week. So that's going to do it for this episode of Rated Barrels. We're back with you on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening.
Make a little cut there.